What I'm going to start in Matthew chapter 6 is going to sound very familiar to you because we have always called it the Lord's Prayer. And I'm going to read from that. It's important to note, however, this is not actually, he's not actually saying, here's my prayer. Please call this the Lord's Prayer. There are prayers that Jesus prayed later, specifically in the garden. I would more likely say that those are actually the things that should have been called the Lord's Prayer. But it's okay, we understand. This is more like the apostles' or the disciples' prayer because he's teaching them what to pray. Okay? Put your, take off your traditional goggles and put on, like, I want to know deeper, truthful, put those glasses on, and you read this, and you realize if Jesus is teaching them what to pray, you can certainly conclude that this is part of an effort to change what they have been praying. Okay? If you go in the Old Testament, there are many prayers, we call these Hebraic prayers, outlined in there. The most famous one is what we call the Aaronic prayer, which is what they would pray with the tallit over their head, and they would actually pray it in Hebrew. To this day, at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, all those guys over there devoutly doing that with the prayer shawls and the all kinds of stuff and the rocking and all that. That's what they're praying, the Aaronic prayer in Hebrew. Okay, that's what these good Jewish boys who were apostles had learned their whole life. Pray these prayers, right? And they're awesome. Many of these prayers of the Old Testament are actually before their time because they are faithfully proclaiming truth, but it is always in a future sense. If you've heard me use the term dispensationalism, I used that quite a bit a few series ago because we talked about how we need to break the cycle of dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is believing in the seasonal, one day it will happen approach of understanding and believing for the promises of God. Those are all for another time and for another dispensation. That is for one day when we're in heaven. Everyone who has at least had any type of upbringing in a traditional Protestant or Catholic, Protestant, Catholic, evangelical, whatever. I don't care if you come from Baptist, Pentecostal, or I ain't never been to church till last week. I don't care where you've come from. Everyone has some type of preconceived understanding that is rooted in what we call dispensationalism. This is the stuff happening now, and the stuff in this book is talking about what will happen in the afterlife. That is what every single religion is based upon. Dispensationalism. In the Old Testament, Judaism was no different. So all of their proclamations and prayers had to do with this dispensational idea. I believe for what God will do one day. Now, the reason why that was actually in some ways appropriate for them was because at that point in time, in linear time, no Messiah had come. And he would come one day. So that idea of a dispensational approach, these things will happen one day, was accurate and appropriate. What Jesus is trying to do is take people with 1,500 years of backstory and ideology and tradition of one day, one day, one day, one day. And he's trying to say, guys, one day is today. That is the entire gospel of Jesus Christ, convincing people all the stuff that you have said one day, that day is here. In fact, literally, one of the things that he proclaimed in the synagogue was, today that scripture has been fulfilled. He said those words, today that scripture has been fulfilled. So he's talking to a group of people who know a bunch of prayers about how to believe for tomorrow. And he says, let me teach you how to pray. In fact, they asked him, Lord, teach us how to pray. So he starts in Matthew chapter 6. We're going to start in verse 9. Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. It says, pray like this. Our beloved, and I apologize, you've not heard this one before. You've heard the traditional one. I'm reading it in the weird one, okay? Our beloved Father, dwelling in heavenly realms. Sounds like I should be wearing a tinfoil hat. Because just say, like we know it's so traditional, right? Our Father who art in heaven. I was a little kid, I thought God's name was Art. I did. I went through that little phase, yep. Our beloved Father, dwelling in the heavenly realms, may the glory of your name be the center on which our lives turn. I happen to like this. Manifest your kingdom realm. I feel like he could have toned down like a little bit, but here we go. Manifest your kingdom realm and cause your every purpose to be fulfilled on earth just as it is in heaven. Go back to verse 9 if you would. I'm going to read it again. And then I'm going to back you away from the mysticism train, and I'll recite it. We'll recite it together, and then we'll feel real comfortable because we're going to use the words we're used to. But he says pray like this. Our beloved Father, dwelling in the heavenly realms, may the glory of your name be the center on which our lives turn. Verse 10. Manifest your kingdom realm and cause your every purpose to be fulfilled on earth just as it is in heaven. Now let's see how good you are. We're going to go back and we're going to do the good old heavenly King James, the same Bible that Paul and Silas had when they were in jail. Okay? Pray like this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy come. See how good you did. See how awesome you did. You guys did awesome, okay? And that is a bunch of people. I don't know if there's any people with a Catholic background in here. The fact that you could make it that far, good job. Okay, now I will tell you the Catholics will be able to recite this entire chapter upside down and backwards in Latin, okay? Because they do this every single Sunday. Every Sunday, every wedding, every funeral. I'm telling you, this is very well known. Our Father who art in heaven. If you had never heard it before, though, and I read it to you in this version, may the glory of your name be the center on which our lives turn. That's an interesting way to see it. But the next one, he says, manifest your kingdom realm and cause your every purpose to be fulfilled on earth just as it is in heaven. When Jesus taught them how to pray, okay, he didn't do it in English, I promise. He taught them how to pray, and this was just as foreign to them. There's a reason I did this. What he was saying to them was just as weird and foreign to them as it was when I just read it to you from this 21st century translation that you'd never heard before. It was just as weird to them to hear that. What? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. What are you talking about? Like that sounded weird to them because it wasn't the Aaronic prayer. And it wasn't the Hebraic utterances that they were used to. He was teaching them how to pray for something today. And that prayer was, I want heaven to be on earth. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I need to take the time, and I'm gonna do my best here to keep us on track. We need to re-examine what we think the kingdom is. And it's nothing different than really what you've ever heard preached in this church, even from years ago, but there is a deeper spin on it. And one of the precursors I give here for this series is there are going to be much more deeper dives consistently in this series than you're used to. In the past, we'd dive into some series here and get into some really good stuff, and every once in a while I'd be like, what about this? And I'd say, whoa, that's weird, and I'd pull it back. You're going to have a lot more of that in this series, okay? And I just want to warn you with that, because some of the stuff is going to be really challenging, but only through the lens of traditionalism. Only through the goggles of, I've always heard it this way. The disciples were experiencing the exact same thing when Messiah was telling them, pray like this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. They heard that, and they were like, whoa, dude. Like, that's weird. But the kingdom of God, by definition, is earth looking like heaven, period. We have always understood that, at least in this church, because we have always preached kingdom. As long as I've been pastor at this church, we have always preached kingdom. But this series is called Kingdom Revelation because we must take what we think we know about the kingdom and marry it to a non-dispensationalist view. So what I mean by that is because part of dispensationalism is earth and heaven existing light years apart in proximity, distance, and time. Because everything that has ever traditionally been taught to us or through our traditional understanding has always given us a view of a very, very, very separate earth and heaven. Right? In fact, I was joking around, but not really, telling you about how this Monday, tomorrow, when this eclipse happens, enjoy it, relax, and don't worry about all the stuff that so many evangelical traditionalist people have told us is supposed to happen tomorrow. I'll promise you this. I will boldly say, of all the days that Jesus could come back and rapture his church, all this it won't be tomorrow. I promise. Why? Because he said it'd be an hour you think not. Gee whiz, 3 billion people think it's going to happen tomorrow. That's kind of not the hour you think not. So I promise you, if you've got any stuff you've really been wanting to get out of the way and do some extra sinning every once in a while, you're probably safe for tomorrow. I'm just kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just kidding. It's coming from a 90s teenager who they said, if you mess up and he'll come back 5 seconds later, right? Like that kind of thing. The reason why there has become this shouldn't happen yesterday. This has happened over the courses of generations, going back at least 50, 60 years. Because I'll promise you, this actually looks no different than what the evangelical church believed in the 70s. Look back to the 70s, and what was that movie we were talking about like a couple months ago? That was like they made us watch this movie from the 70s. What is it called? No, that's Kirk Cameron. Yeah. What was the one called? Because that one was intense. That one, they were actually chopping people's heads off at the end. Yeah. It was like, it's very 70s. I mean, it's very like Bee Gees music and stuff like that. But I mean, it's this, no, Left Behind, that's Kirk Cameron. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, somebody look it up. It's a rapture movie from the 70s. And once I hear this title, but anyway, and you have that song going all the way back to that generation was, the sun has come and you've been left behind, right? And anybody find it? Thief in the Night. Oh my gosh, that still gives me chills just to hear the title. They made us watch this movie. Go home and look it up on YouTube. And you're like, what are they doing? They did. They made us watch this movie, Thief in the Night. And it was like, this has culminated through an ideology of, we've got to get out of here. Because what the gospel that Jesus preached became in the 1900 years it took to get us to the 70s when they made that movie, the transitions that changed ideologically were ones that shifted from heaven existing on earth, and it made heaven and earth 1 billion light years apart, and evil is on earth, and God's going to get us out of here. And that married with dispensationalism led us to what I have called, many people have called, escape theology. And it becomes this idea that says everything that's in this book, listen, they told us that this is the Bible, Bible. You know what it stands for, everybody. Jars, whoever it was it Jars of Clay? Who did? What's Bible stand for? Basic instructions before leaving earth. Did nobody ever hear that? It's in that song, Basic. I thought that was Jars of Clay. Is that not Jars of Clay? Anyway, basic instructions before leaving earth. That's what they told me it stood for. I mean, obviously we knew that somebody made that up, but it is married to the idea of you are being prepared to get out of here. Okay? You're getting out of here one day. So everything had to become about that transition process. And there's only 2 transition processes to escape from here: death and rapture. And the old people were closer to death than rapture, so they fell in love with the songs about dying. And the younger generation, going all the way back to the 70s, fell in love with the idea of God getting us out, because I'm still like 30, 40 years from death, so I'd rather Jesus come now. So everything was the idea of escape. Get me out of here, get me out of here. One day we're going to get out of here. And so you have this idea of every single thing became about the fear of missing it. And now that became an extremely useful tool in the arsenal of creating converts. Because it's one thing for me to show you the truth of the power of the presence of God, and this is what He wants to be in your life, and that be something that a person is drawn to. I would rather one person be drawn to that revelation of understanding and want His presence because they are drawn to His goodness than 10 people come running because they're scared of what will happen if they don't. Because people who just think of church as the thing we must do to keep ourselves in good standing with the big guy, we then become people who are dependent upon superficial things. We become a people who are dependent upon the church process. And part of the church process is, do they have what entices me in my flesh? Do they have what entices me on a carnal level? Do I like the music? Do I like this style? Do I like that style? Okay? But when it comes down, what it comes down to, the few remnant, the backbone of the spiritual believers in any body of Christ, are always ones who say, what I want is His presence because I've been there. And once you have tasted and seen that the Lord is good, I am enticed and drawn by what His presence can do. Because what we have transitioned from the Old Testament to the New Testament is a group of people who had a tabernacle in the wilderness, who they could experience Him from a distance on certain days. They could see from the exterior the proof of His being there. They could visually see it, the way that they visually saw that the Spirit and presence of God was in the temple. There was a flame over top of Moses' tabernacle in the wilderness that signified that the presence of God was in that room. A room they didn't have access to, by the way. And they couldn't physically be in there and experience it and feel it, but they could see it. A flame over the top. When Jesus said, okay, here's a deeper dive that threatens to be heretically offensive. When Jesus said, I'm coming back to the believers, the church needs to understand. Now, I'm not wrapping everything we've ever believed into this, but I'm wrapping a whole lot of it. When Jesus told the disciples, I'm coming back, I firmly believe the thing we missed was the fact that he was talking about the upper room. Not one day. Not on eclipse day. Not in the thief in the night and the hour you think not. He said, I'm coming back. I believe he was talking about what was going to happen 50 days later in an upper room in Acts chapter 2. Because Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father. Christ is the Spirit that the book of Romans says now dwells on the inside of me. So Christ had to come back. By the time Paul wrote Romans, Christ had come back because Paul wrote, the Spirit of Christ, the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead has now quickened my mortal body and lives on the inside of me. Christ returned in Acts chapter 2. And what changed at that moment? How did they know that the Spirit of God was dwelling in that tabernacle? A flame was over top of the temple. What happened to 120 people in the upper room in Acts chapter 2 when the day of Pentecost was fully come, and suddenly there came a sound of a rushing mighty wind, and there appeared unto them cloven flames of fire that sat upon each of them. The flame did not burn over top of the temple anymore. The flame burnt over top of the original temple. I can go back. I'll probably come back to it at some point. I'm not going to do it today when I talk to you about how I believe that God actually designed Moses' tabernacle to be a symbolic representation of the original temple of God, which was. And people, this is nothing new. These are things that people used to understand. God lives in me. Me. Where does he want to be? In a building? No, he wants to be in your thoughts. In your thoughts. Let this mind be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. Can I do a little exercise with you? Let me take one finger. Right, left hand, I don't care. One finger. This is weird. I want you to take one finger and point to your thoughts. Very good. Good job. Everyone in the entire room pointed to this soft spot on the side of your head. What do we call that? Where does he want to be? He wants to be in the temple. Woo-hoo! Let's jump back to some normal stuff now. All right? He wants the kingdom is two different realms. And one realm affects the other. I need you to be okay with me using the word realm. Because if you can't handle the word realm, you're really going to flip out next week when I start talking about portals. Which is really strange because they told me as a kid about portals. They told me about you watch that movie, listen to that rock and roll music. You know what that is? That's a spiritual portal. That's a portal. You're going to let the devil in, right? And we'd have those young life meetings where you'd bring your CDs and stomp on the CDs. Oh my gosh, we did so much stuff. Why? Because those are portals. To what? To demonic realms. And my thinking is just weird enough to say if we had so much ability and no trouble at all in believing in bad portals to evil realms, shouldn't we also have just as much ability to believe that there is a heavenly realm that God has the ability to access into this world, and maybe that's a portal too? Okay, but that's next week. I'm going to get ahead of myself. The kingdom, I'm going to read one more scripture, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't tell them any of them today. It's because I know how good they are. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. I'm going to read this one for you. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. They'll have it before I do. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. I'm supposed to sing it. Check 2 Corinthians chapter 4. And we're going to go to verse 18, I believe. Because we don't focus our attention on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but the unseen realm, you see that? As Paul said this, but the unseen realm is eternal. Now he's talking about many different things here in the second letter to the Corinthians. But what he just said was, and you'll notice he did no explanation. That's because people did not struggle with this idea back then. They understood. There's an unseen realm. There's a seen realm and there's an unseen realm. The unseen realm is eternal. So we're talking, this is heaven, heavenly. Okay? There is a famous scripture written by Paul where he says, I knew a man once. And all theologians agree he's talking about himself. I believed my whole life he referred to him as I knew a man because he was trying to be humble. But I'll get to what I actually think the case is. He said, I knew a man once. Whether in the body or in the spirit, I cannot tell. I don't know. I have no idea. Whether in the body or in the spirit, I cannot tell. Paul was saying there are two realms, heavenly realm and an earthly realm that coexist. And what Paul says is, you guys will never believe what has happened to me. I got so close to him that I actually started jumping realms. And he said, and when I got there, I didn't recognize myself. That's why he said I knew a man. He wasn't even sure who he was. Whether in the body or in the spirit, I don't know. It's this weird little nugget that Paul threw in there like, dude, what happened to you? Like that kind of person is the kind of person that comes back and they get interviewed on some obscure cable channel out in front of their trailer before they put their teeth back in, right? Like those are usually those weird conspiracy people coming back. I saw it. It was this big and it flew over the house and all this kind of stuff. Paul is literally having one of those moments. He's like, guys, listen, something happened. I didn't even recognize myself, and I don't even know if I was here or there. It's crazy Paul is trying to show these people there is more here than what you can see. There is a kingdom that is not of this earth. He didn't say it's not on this earth. He said it's not of this earth. We usually have no trouble believing in an invisible and a visible, and I'm going to prove it to you. Everybody in here, if you have a cell phone, I want you to hold it up, okay? I'm not going to ask you to read your last text or show your last picture or anything like that, because we wouldn't all survive that probably. Most of us maybe could, but maybe not. I don't know. But you got a cell phone, right? Go ahead and put it down. Why does this cell phone work? Yeah. 5G. They turned on the 5G this week, and that's why people are getting sick, and there's an eclipse happening, and the poles are going to flip, and it's because of that dang 5G. And we didn't used to have these tornadoes till they built them roundabouts either. Your phone works for the same reason that like all the other stuff works, because there are waves all over the place, cellular signals. There's Wi-Fi all over this room right now. You can't see it. It's invisible, but it's here, ain't it? How do you know it's here? Because it somehow transitions from an unseen existence to something that you now can hold on. You now have, it's your phone. You can hear it. You can see it on the screen. It transitions from one realm to the other. I will remind you what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6. He said, manifest your kingdom on earth. What does manifest mean? It's the same thing that happens when your invisible cellular signal turns into Candy Crush or whatever. It's the same. It manifested. It transitioned from something you can't see into what you can see. So I want to show you that's something we don't struggle with believing in all of these other cases. But once somebody starts talking about there is a heavenly realm here now, and it wants to manifest through you, right? Wait a minute, guy. I just wanted to hear the 5 points in a prayer I'm used to, right? That's only a joke for the Baptists. You have no idea. If you didn't go to Baptist church or Baptist school, you have no idea that everything is in 5 points, right? Anyway, okay. They call it 5 points in a prayer. It's just a good, organized Baptist message. Dude, I just came to hear the 3 or 4 or 5 points in a prayer. You're talking about there's something I can't see here in this. Yeah, it's called the kingdom. Why did Jesus, if you've ever asked, had this inner struggle, Jesus from the time of Adam to the time of Christ was 4,000 years. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. That's a long time to wait. Why didn't he come back like next week when Adam fell? You ever thought about that? Okay. There's all type of, we call them epochs of history. There was like, you know, the Sumerians, not the Sumerians, the Sumerians, early civilization. Then you have the Egyptian Empire. You have the Syrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Persians, the Greeks. I'm using the wrong word there. All of these empires throughout history. Jesus could have come back in any one of them. He could have come as Messiah and died on a cross in any one of those eras. But he chose to come when he did. It was God's plan. Why did it have to be then? I don't necessarily have the answer to that other than to tell you I believe because the people needed something visually symbolic on this earth that they can look at and be like, oh, that's what he's doing. And kingdom up until the Romans looked much different than it did under the Roman Empire. Kingdom or empire under every single civilization leading up to the Romans looked like coming in and conquering a foreign land, scooping all the people up and bringing them back. And you don't live there anymore. You live here now. You're one of us. That's what every single conquering empire looked like. That's what the Egyptians did. Okay, that's what the Medes, the Persians, the Assyrians. I already said the Babylonians. To a point, the Greeks did this in a hybrid fashion. You have Alexander the Great, who actually started to do something new and radical, but he died when he was 30 years old of malaria, so he didn't get to go much further. And then everything kind of went back to the way that it was, and you have an Egyptian empire and all this kind of stuff. But the Romans introduced a new style that the people had never seen. They conquered a foreign land, and then they left everybody where they were. And they said, you're Romans now. You're going to use Roman money. You're going to talk a Roman language. Your culture is going to change to a Roman culture. Your economy is going to be Roman. Your laws are going to be governed by Rome. but we're leaving you here. We're going back to Rome. That's headquarters, and we're going to rule you from there. Fast forward many, 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 many years later, you now today call that colonialism. And that's what you see. That's how this country started. People came over here, but they were still British. And even in my lifetime, I think most of these islands have shifted to independence, but even down in like the Bahamas, many of them were still British. And if you went to any of those islands in the Bahamas, there might be some native, very few remnants of native culture there, but for the most part, you're going to see people who look and act British. They drive on the left side of the road. They talk with a British accent. Their money is British pounds. Like I said, this is maybe 20, 30 years ago. Most of them are independent now. Why is that? Because that culture was one that said, we want our culture here at headquarters to be seen by others who have never been here before. How are we going to do that? We're going to go to where they are. And we're going to take whatever culture they have. And I understand that most of the idea and the thoughts of colonialism, they're not good. And it wasn't good to do all of this. And it wasn't just the British. The French did this as well. The Chinese did this as well. All throughout history, we have this type of kingdom empire, which would later be called colonialism. That's what they did. They made the local culture shift to look like a foreign culture. And no one understood, no one had ever seen that before until the Romans. The Romans did that. Now they understood a new version of what kingdom looked like. And now Jesus came. So to me, what was actually happening was Jesus knew he was coming here to teach and preach about the kingdom of God. And he needed people to understand what the kingdom of God really looked like. It did not look like a conquering force where we scoop you all up and bring you back home. It actually looks like a conquering force that now rules you where you are, and our culture becomes your culture. And that's the kingdom of God. And I believe that what was happening was God needed people to know the true definition of what kingdom was. So he had to wait until the Romans came and showed people this version, even though it's imperfect. Now the people understood. When Jesus talks about the kingdom of God, they start thinking he's talking about a headquarters ruling a foreign distant land through the people, through ambassadors that represent headquarters. Now, take that idea and completely divorce it from dispensationalism. Here's earth, here's heaven. And now marry that with an idea of a very present realm called heaven. Not way over here. He's not talking about distant heaven ruling distant earth. He's talking about invisible heaven ruling visible earth. You all with me on that? All right. That's a whole lot of introduction. And I'm going to say I've got 8 minutes. It's 11:52. Are you okay with 8 minutes? All right. I want to read something for you. I think. Maybe not. The idea of the kingdom is the invisible affecting the visible. That's what it is. The invisible affecting the visible. I've already brought up the example of like the cell phone signals and stuff like that. Okay, there's something else that is invisible. We call it electricity. Now I know that some people have seen electricity before, like you've seen that little spark jump and stuff like that. What you saw was a thermal reaction in the atmosphere. You didn't actually see the little electrons called electricity. Electricity is invisible. But I promise you, you are seeing right now the effects of electricity. An invisible force has been made manifest. And you can thank Thomas Edison for this. It's the light bulb. It can be converted to something that is visible through we're going to use these terminologies, through a manifestation process. And the manifestation of how, and I guess I'll close with this. The manifestation of how a light bulb, I'm not talking about the new LEDs and stuff like that. I'm talking about Thomas Edison's light bulb that was for 100 years the way that we made incandescent light. It is in a vacuum chamber, and there is this thing called a filament. Most of them made out of tungsten. And if you look in there, do it when the light's off. Don't be one of these weirdos. Okay? There's a filament, and it's like coiled up, right? It's a tungsten filament. And what is happening is invisible electricity starts flowing through it. And the tungsten is built in such a way that it can't help when that invisible force is acting upon it. It begins to produce a reaction of heat and light. It is so hot that bulb of glass is a vacuum so that there's no oxygen in there so that it can't combust. And electricity is flowing through there, and the tungsten, which is an element, is just the right. Thomas Edison said, I tried 999 ways to not build a light bulb. I found 999 failures because he used so many different things, but he found this element called tungsten, which just so happens to be just the right chemical makeup. That electricity, which is invisible, starts flowing through it, and it reacts. And the reaction manifests the invisible electricity, and you see it. What if God didn't randomly make you out of whatever scrap he had laying around? What if he said, I want them to be made in such a way, he said, in my likeness and in my image, so that when my invisible presence starts flowing through them, it has a reaction that just listen, and it's not because they tried, it's not because they made it happen. Tungsten in those light bulbs is not sitting there saying, make light. No, it just happens because of what's flowing through it. What if the kingdom of God is dependent upon your design? And your design is when invisible presence starts flowing through me, I'm supposed to react to that in a way that manifests what used to be invisible, and it's now transitioned to the visible. Y'all good with that? So, next week, we're going to talk about this portal that God made to manifest invisible to visible. He made a portal. His name was Adam. He made a portal. It's you. The instrument that transitions the invisible to the visible. The kingdom of God. And what is supposed to happen, you guys can come to the music, what is supposed to happen during that transition process is a power that is foreign to this realm, invading and conquering. God never intended to be some extra side help. Y'all hear me? He never intended to be some side extra helper in your situation. He intended for your situations to be conquered by heaven. Invaded. Your home is not supposed to have a little bit of extra Jesus in it. Your home is supposed to be invaded by heaven to the point that the culture changes. Right? when the invasions took place by Rome or Great Britain or all these conquering forces, what ended up happening was the culture looked different. He doesn't intend to be some side piece in your life and in your home and in your marriage, and all of this is the kingdom of God. Seek first the kingdom of God. What's the kingdom? An invasion that changes culture. Stand to your feet.